Hello, ma'am and friends. Thank you for the opportunity today. So we are from Group 9. We will present our presentation about individual differences in second language learning. So before that, let me introduce our member of group. The first member is Wasali Papalia. It's me, so I will explain about who is a good language learner and what is the research on learner characteristics like intelligence, aptitude, learning styles, and personality. The second member is Maria Jeparudara. She also explain about what is the research on learning characteristics like motivation and attitudes, identity and ethnic group application, learner beliefs and age of acquisition, and the critical period hypothesis. And the last one is conclusion. So, who is a good language learner? We know that some people learn language more quickly than others, even in first language acquisition. The rate of development varies widely. Some children can string together 5, 6, and 7-word sentences at an age when other children are just beginning to label items in their immediate environment. Nevertheless, children eventually master their first language. So I think everyone has determination to be a good language learner as long as they want to keep trying and never give up to continue to hone themselves to be better. The next is what is the research on learner characteristics? Here we have some of the characteristics that have been researched by researchers. The first is intelligence. Over the years, some research has shown that IQ scores were a good means of predicting success in second language learning. However, as suggested above, IQ tests may be more strongly related to metalinguistic knowledge than to communicative ability. So, for example, in a study with students in French immersion programs in Canada, Fred Genesi at 1976 found that while intelligence was related to the development of French second language reading, grammar, and vocabulary, it was unrelated to oral production skills. This suggests that the kind of ability measured by traditional IQ tests may be a strong predictor when it comes to learning that involves language analysis and role learning. Jadi intelijen sendiri mungkin berperan penting sebagai bentuk IQ terbaik dalam sebuah tes, tapi tidak selamanya intelijen itu memainkan peran yang penting bagi orang yang ingin menguasai bahasa kedua mereka. Karena seperti yang kita lihat di sekarang ini, banyak siswa atau mungkin orang di luar sana yang mungkin akademik atau sekolahnya lemah, tapi mereka bisa berhasil dalam pembelajaran bahasa kedua mereka. Next is the second one is aptitude. Specific abilities thought to predict success in language learning have been studied under the title of language learning aptitude. One of the pioneers in this area, John Carroll, in 1991, has characterized aptitude in terms of the ability to learn quickly. Thus, we may hypothesize that a learner with high aptitude may learn with greater ease and speed, but that other learners may also be successful if they persevere. So, for example, Leila Ranta at 2002 found that children who were good at analyzing language were the most successful learners in an English second language program in which activities almost never involve direct attention to grammar. So, attitudes is not always a requirement for someone to be able to master a second language, because if they try to study the language diligently, then they will be able to master a second language, as some previous researchers have researched. The second is learning styles. According to Reid at 1995, The term learning style has been used to describe a person's natural ways, habits, and preference in absorbing, processing, and retaining new information and skills. We have all heard people say that there are people who can't learn something until they see, that called visual learner. There are also people when learning better using then the ear or listen, it's called oral learner. And there are some people who will easily learn if practiced directly or by imitating something, it's called kinesthetic learner. Jadi ternyata ada berbagai jenis learning style, cara-cara belajar seperti orang yang cara belajarnya secara visual, yaitu mereka yang mengandalkan penglihatan untuk memahami sesuatu. Atau ada juga orang yang cara belajarnya secara aural, yang mengandalkan telinga sebagai sarana mereka untuk menyimak, memahami sesuatu. Dan ada juga pula orang yang belajar secara kinestetik, atau mereka lebih paham apa yang dijelaskan guru atau teman mereka. Jika guru mereka menjelaskan apa yang ingin mereka jelaskan secara lebih ke praktik, langsung ke praktik atau meniru sesuatu. The fourth one is personality. As with other research investigating the effects of individual characteristics on second language learning, different studies measuring a similar personality trait produce different results. For example, it's often argued that an extroverted person is well suited to language learning. However, research doesn't always support this conclusion. Although some studies have found that success in second language is correlated with learners' scores on questionnaires measuring characteristics associated with extroversion, such as assertiveness and adventurousness. Others have found that many successful language learners don't get high scores on measuring level of extroversion. And Lily Wong Fillmore at 1979 found that in certain learning situations that quick observant learning may have greater success. Another aspect of personality that has been studied is inhibition. It has been suggested that inhibition discourages risk-taking, which is necessary for progress in language learning. This is often considered to be a particular problem for adolescents who are more self-conscious than younger learners. So I think extrovert have nothing to do with a good language learner. It's true that an extrovert is someone who is active, talking, or socializing with other people, but it's possible that an introvert is much better at mastering language, as explained by Lily Wong Fillmore earlier. Introverts may be quiet people, but we don't know behind their silence what they have learned or what they have mastered. Okay, the next part will present of my friend Maria J. Prodara. Time is yours.
Thank you for the time and opportunity. Here I will discuss about motivation and attitude, and identity and ethnic group affiliation, learning beliefs, and act of acquisition and the critical period hypothesis. Okay, next, motivation and attitudes. Robert Gardner and his colleagues have conducted research on the relationship between learners' attitudes toward accepting or forgetting language and their communities. As suggested above, it is difficult to know whether positive attitudes result in successful learning or positive success learning. Research cannot prove that positive attitudes and motivation lead to success in learning. There is a lot of evidence that positive motivation with a willingness to continue to learn. Motivation in learning a second language is a complex phenomenon. It has been defined in terms of two factors. On the one hand, the communicative needs of learners, and on the other, the attitude towards the second language community. Research has shown that type of motivation is relevant to success in second language learning. But the differences are not always as clear cut as in the context of research, where context was described. In some learning environments, it is difficult to distinguish between the two types of language and community orientation. Furthermore, early research on motivation tends to conceptualize it as a stable characteristic for the learning. More recent work is based on the dynamics of motivation and to explain changes that occur over time. In a book devoted to helping second language teachers generate and maintain student motivation, Dorier 2001 proposes and describes concrete and innovative methods and techniques that can help teacher motivate learning during thesis 3 phases. 1. Motivating students into the lesson at the opening stage of the lesson and in transition. It has been observed that teacher statements about upcoming activities can lead to higher levels of interest on the part of students. Through varying activity assignment and material, students are assured of a class roughness they can rely on. However, lessons that always consist of the same roughness, partners, and format have been shown to lead to decreased attention, the increased bedroom. Varying activity assignment and materials can help avoid this and increase student interest levels. 3. Using comparative rather than competitive goals. Comparative learning activity are activities in which students have to work together to complete a task or solve a problem. These techniques have been found to increase student self-confidence, including the weaker ones, because each participant in a comparative task has an important role to play. Knowing that their teammates rely on them can increase student motivation. Okay, next, ethnic group identity and affiliation. Social factor at a more general level can influence the motivation, attitudes, and success in language learning. One of these factors is social dynamics or power relation between language. For example, members of a minority group who study the language of the majority group may have different attitudes and motivation than members of a majority group who learn the language of the minority. While it is impossible to predict the exact effect of this social factor on second language learning, the fact that language exists in a social context cannot be ignored when we seek to understand the variables that influence success in learning. But children and adults are sensitive to social dynamics and power relation. A good example for how power relation, the social world affect the interaction between second language learning and language speaker is as follows. All the participants in the study were very interested in learning English. However, there are social situations where they are reluctant to speak up, and these are usually situations where there is a balance of power. Their experience in practice limits the opportunity they have for and continue to develop a second language outside of this classroom. Next, learn confidence. Second language learners are not always aware of their individual cognitive or perceptual learning style, but almost all learners, especially older learners, have strong belief on opinions about how their instruction should be delivered. These beliefs are usually based on previous learning experience and assumption, true or wrong, that a certain type of instruction is the best way for them to learn. This is another where later work has been done. However, a viable research suggests that learners' beliefs can be a strong mediating factor in their experience in the classroom. Next, acquire and critical period hypothesis. The characteristics are easier to measure than personal attitude or motivation, but the relationship between act and success in mainstream and second language is hardly any less complex and complex. It is often observed that most of the immigrant children and families end up speaking the new community language with such fluency as native, while their parents often fail to master such a high levels of mastery of the spoken language. To be sure, there are cases where adult second language learning distinguish themselves by their excellent language skill. Okay, conclusion. A second language is one aspect that we need to master as student. Moreover, we will be one of the future development candidates for our country as an competent young nation. Therefore, learning a second language for an individual is very important of course. Behind all that the learning process take be each individual must be different. So learning while you can and develop while you are still young, because language unites us. Thank you.
Friends, that's all from our group. Thank you for your attention and any questions.